What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video. And today we're going to be reviewing CBS's brand new mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, join the community. As always, we're on the way to 10K. I'm wearing this hat because I lost a bet, but that is a-okay. That's beside the point. You gotta live by the rules. Let's get right into this. Again, feel free to join the community. Would love to be able to chat with y'all. Discord as well as a great community. We have 700 people there. So feel free to come hop on and join the family. Let's get right into this, starting out with the number one overall selection. This is based off of last week's odds. You got Caleb Williams. Again, this is not my mock draft. This is CBS's mock draft for those of y'all who did not see that. Caleb Williams, number one overall. After seeing what Justin did, back-to-back weeks against, honestly, a pretty formidable opponent. We think that, Washington's starting lineup on their defense is actually a good team. So it's honestly so nice to see that Justin's getting out of that rusty first three games. Like sometimes players take a long time to develop into the player that they need to be. And I'm hoping that Justin has finally hit his stride. Again, I want to see more before I fully crown him, but I'm just very happy to at least consider it. So that's a great start. However, if you're in this situation, depends on what teams are willing to pay you for Justin, because Justin will cost a good amount of money. Caleb is spectacular. Even though he didn't perform well, he's actually going to be on studs and duds this week in one of the duds category. But, regardless, Caleb Williams, still a spectacular player. Every good player stumbles here and there, but, this is the top two. Don't think we really need to talk too much about it. They're incredible. Drake May, I actually mentioned this in my video yesterday. I talked about how I didn't like the Raiders as a good landing spot. And, to be fair, the weapons there are incredible. I feel like the personnel allows Drake to be able to emphasize his strengths. I don't know if it minimizes weaknesses because he does have a tendency to lower his shoulder. He doesn't like to, he sometimes bails out of clean pockets. Not a huge fan of that. It's not that big of an issue, but for Drake, it really is sometimes the inconsistencies. You do have the type of guys who can kind of bail you out in that situation. My big issue with it is I don't know who the coach is going to be. Once we know the coach, then I'll be a lot more down, because we even see with guys like Kenny Pickett, they could be absolutely useless, even though Kenny, I'm not fully sold on anymore. They could be absolutely useless with a crap OC. So I'm hoping if the Raiders coaching staff is a really solid assembled one, or I think they would be a great addition. Next, we got Dallas Turner. This dude went off this past week as well. 8 pressures in the past game. Again, we'll be talking about him in studs and duds. Y'all see he is my number one edge rusher in the class. He's been my number one edge rusher in the class, and he's going to continue being my number one edge rusher in the class. No shade to Jared Verse because he's a spectacular player too, but I think both guys are blue chip prospects, and Denver will be needing some extra edge rusher help. Next, we got J.J. McCarthy. 3 picks versus Bowling Green makes me a little bit worrisome. I know sometimes when you're playing the easy teams, when you take your foot off the gas, that's sometimes when you make the most mistakes, rather than, when you're focused, having to make every single play count. But, I'm not that big of, I don't have an issue with JJ McCarthy. I think that his size is a bit of a concern. I think that he's still a little bit erratic, but he's a good quarterback. I'm not going to shame a team for taking him in the first. Top 10, I'm not there yet. Not there. Of course, I want to see more all-22. Maybe I will be there with more studying. He's still a very, very good prospect. Don't think he's QB3, but he's a very, very good prospect. Olu Fashanu for the Jets is an A++ move. I'm not going to shame that pick whatsoever. Joe Alt for the Patriots. They're at this point going to be getting up into QB territory, but Joe Alt just allowed 3 pressures again this past week. I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that he has seemed to regress quite a bit. I have dropped his grade a little bit. Still think he's a good tackle, but there is some concern when he's not performing up to where he should. Like, he should not be allowing 3 pressures. Him and Blake Fisher didn't do a very good job. Both of them allowed 3 pressures this past week. Now, just a little bit worried about that, but it certainly has solidified Olu as by far my number 1 tackle at left tackle, that is, in the draft. JC Latham's next. 0 pressures allowed this past week. The talent's all there. He's not 360 pounds. I seriously don't understand where they're getting this figure from. Everybody, including Alabama, I believe, says it's 335. At least PFF confirmed 335. Don't know why it says 360, but it's still spectacular talent. It's just the motor I am still concerned about. Still see him giving up early on plays. Not a huge fan of that. But, if you get that out of the way, which sometimes players just get their head and ass wired together in the offseason, really put their pedal to the metal in the NFL, he could definitely be an excellent pick for the Bengals. Next, we got Kool-Aid McKinstry there for the Cardinals. Somebody said that he was like eaten alive this past week. It's not true. He allowed 50 yards. He's not performing at the 16 pass breakups the way that maybe he was last year, but he's still doing a damn good job. He's still a top tier corner. So very excited to see that. I honestly like players who have seen a little bit of adversity just to see how they bounce back, i.e. Caleb Williams. I'm going to be very excited to see how he plays the next game after only putting up 200 yards and 2 turnover-worthy plays. And then we got Jerzon Newton here. The Giants need a lot bigger. They have a lot bigger issues than defensive interior, and this class is pretty deep at it. I love Jerzon Newton. I'm not going to get mad if they end up taking him, if the later rounds end up yielding better, maybe some Blake Fisher for right tackle, for example. But it's a risky move. It's a risky move. Obviously, Talise Fuaga, my number 3 player in the draft. I think he's a generational level talent. Guy's just spectacular. I think this would be an excellent spot for him to go to. I would say ship Evan Neal to the Jets if they don't want to go Olu Fashanu earlier. Or send him to the Green Bay Packers, where he could end up being a left tackle for them with Bakhtiari having his 4th knee surgery. It's pretty atrocious. But yeah, Jerzon Newton, I think that I think there's better positions to target, but still an excellent, excellent player. Mason Smith finally actually had a good game this past week, 4 pressures. I highly doubt that the Packers need to go after another defensive interior when you have safety as a big priority and you still have, really good safeties on the board. I think that's a position you can go. Offensive tackle, again, Bakhtiari out again. Like, Rasheed Walker's okay, serviceable, but you don't want an okay, serviceable guy to be your starter. You want a good starter to be your starter. So that's where I ended up bringing up the Evan Neal idea. Jared Verse should not be here. He should not go go after Mason Smith either. But, to be fair, we're looking at, like, they kind of believe that too. But Jared Verse, the value adds up. I think it's an excellent move if he's on the board. Emeka Buka to the Cardinals. For me, after Michael Wilson is, again, we're going to project that he remains healthy. Like, that's the tough part. If he remains healthy, there's no need to go wide receiver. I like the corner idea. I'd go defensive interior at this spot. Pick number 14, Amarius Mims. Actually, I'd debate taking Amarius Mims for this team as well, but Amarius Mims is an A+ move for the Chargers. Of course, I have Talise above him, but I can't really complain with getting a super stud at offensive tackle at pick number 14. Great pick. Pick number 15, Brock Bowers. He should not be on the board. Again, that goes without saying. He's an excellent player. To me, he's a generational level tight end. He's up there with Kyle Pitts. I think Kyle Pitts he's a different style tight end, to be fair. But Kyle Pitts was better in my eyes. But Brock Bowers actually brings the pass blocking to the game and just the blocking in general that I don't expect with somebody who is built like Brock Bowers. So he is much more well-rounded than I think what people like to say. Now we got JT Tuimoloau. He actually had 6 pressures this past week. He's been getting better and better and better. He still is not there yet. Again, got to be the voice of reason here. He last year had one really good game, did not put it together at all. This year, he's been gaining momentum, and I'm all for it. I love seeing guys get better and better and better. And that's exactly what he's doing. So very excited to see him continue to have success. I think this would be an excellent location for him to go to. I don't think he's worth the number 16 pick just yet, but he's starting to really make a good case for himself to be in this position. So good for him. Great for JT. Now we got Leonard Taylor here for the Jaguars. Didn't have a pressure this past week, so he will be on studs and duds, or it's, stock report, risers and fallers. But, regardless, the talent is undeniable. He had like 8 and 9 pressures or 8 and 7 pressures over the past 2 weeks. And then this week versus Georgia Tech is 0, which is a little bit weird. But, again, I'll give guys a mulligan here and there as long as they bounce back. Then we got Shadur Sanders for the Rams. There's no need for Shadur to go to LA, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of the fact that he was flexing his watch. Like, no one gives a shit about your money, bro. If we're going to be 100% honest here, like, I started actually not liking Shadur based on that alone. I don't like guys who just try to flex. It's a thing for me. I'm not a big fan of that, especially when you're taunting fans. Like, I get it. It's cool to have that energy, that vibe. And y'all know I like the talent of Shadur. I had him my number 5 quarterback before he ever took a snap at Colorado. Like, I do believe in him. But I don't think a leader of a multi-billion-dollar franchise should just be going and taunting fans with a watch on his wrist and just saying, "Oh, look how much money I have. Look at the bling on my wrist." Not a fan of that. Again, that's very trivial. That's not on the field, but for me, when I'm deciding if I want Shadur, Michael Penix, Bo Nix as my quarterback, Joe Milton in that category as well for me still, I'm going to be going with somebody where, since their talent levels are relatively the same, I'm going to go with someone who I believe can lead my locker room a little bit better too. So I would be opting out Shadur Sanders at that point. And I don't think that they need to take a first round quarterback. There's just bigger issues that they can continue to fill. And, maybe give Stetson a job, maybe go after another free agent. I feel like if they're here at 18, I don't think Stafford's given up. I don't. Stafford looks incredible. He looks like he was when he was 30. So I don't know. He still seems like he has some juice left in the tank. The Rams have some definite hope there. Riley Leonard, I don't know what the narrative is here. He's not that great. He hasn't performed that great once this season. He has, I mean, you even look at that Clemson game. It was not because of Riley Leonard as a quarterback that they won. Bo Nix is better in every single category. Size, I'm pretty sure he's comparable, if not even bigger than Riley Leonard. The Riley Leonard train needs to stop. I'm going to just say that right now. He's not that great of a quarterback. And I'm pretty sure he's injured too now. So, he's not even able to really prove me wrong, which I love being proven wrong. I do. It's like one of the best things in the world to be proven wrong. I'm a big fan of Bo Nix, and I think he's an excellent fit in this system. Maybe that's why I'm also a little bit harsher on the Riley Leonard idea. I think that if this were round 3, this is an excellent idea because I think Riley Leonard could fit the system, but his lack of arm talent really is apparent. I don't know why some people think he has a very strong arm. He doesn't have a strong arm, but good mobility. He is a relatively solid game manager. It's just limited upside makes me feel a little uncomfortable taking a quarterback in the first round. Latu, one of those guys where I really want to love him more than I do. Has a freakish build. It's 265 with he might have 40-inch arms for all I know. Like, he does have some Kevin Durant looking arms there. Great length, great block shedding ability. I just don't think it translates to the NFL. And I hope I'm wrong because you see the measurables, it's ridiculous. You see the statistics, it's ridiculous. And usually it's like, okay, well, quantitative and qualitative, they match together. But there's just something about it that doesn't feel NFL translatable. And I'm really hoping I'm wrong. But gotta be honest with y'all. I'm just not a big fan of Latu. Then we got Kingsley Sua-Montaia here out of BYU. He's playing left tackle right now. So it's intriguing that we'd be going after a guy who just played left tackle and moving back to right tackle. I get some PTSD of Evan Neal right there. Of course, it could end up being like Penei Sewell, even though Penei Sewell never played right tackle. Anywho, I'd rather go after Talisi Fuaga. Obviously, of course I would. He's my number 3 player in the draft. I'm a little bit biased there. But I would go Kingsley over Tyler Guyton at this point. Guyton's been allowing too many pressures for my liking there on the right side, and at least Kingsley can fill in at left tackle if need be. Now we got Malik Neighbors here for the Titans. He had about, I think, 160 yards this past week, and he's a very, very talented wide receiver. Fits the role very, very well. I just don't know if I trust wide receivers to meet their potential here in Tennessee. So long as Derrick Henry is there and the offensive system is as it is, I'm not going to be taking a wide receiver in the first to the Titans. I'd be continuing to bolster the offensive line, making sure Tyjae Spears, if you are ever going to get rid of King Henry, is going to be the man. I'd rather just be able to help out the run game, and the run game helps out the pass game. Now you got Cameron Kitchens. Don't know if safety is the biggest position I would target for the Seahawks. I still have some really good defensive interiors on the board, even though we are seeing that Chris Jenkins is not as effective, which is my big concern about Chris Jenkins coming into the year is, well, are you, Chris Jenkins, going to be the same player, 20 pounds heavier? So far, it doesn't look like it, but he statistically wasn't great last year. So I'm excited to dive into the tape and then see if, once again, the statistics don't always show how he performs. So I'd be leaning more towards defensive interior route. Of course, Michael Hall had a really good game. So, down the line, you could go that. But at that 280 range, 290 range, I'm a little bit worried. I'd probably like to go Tyreek Williams for the Seahawks. Maybe if you want to trade back and get Tyreek, that's a way you can go. But regardless, I'd go a different position. But this player, Cameron Kinchens, is a baller, even though he technically let up a perfect passer rating this past week, 2 receptions allowed, including a touchdown. But again, players have slip ups here and there, and that's okay. Kalen King is a monster. Y'all know exactly how much I love Kalen King. He's here at number 11 on my board, and this is an excellent fit with the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to give that a tip of my cap. Keon Coleman shouldn't be here necessarily because there's not many X-build receivers in the class, but he is actually kind of pigeonholed into being more. He's not a great route runner. He's not a bad route runner by any stretch, but he's not an elite route runner. You're not going to trust him to generate separation with his route running ability. You trust him to generate separation with his physicality and the fact that he's going to be always open, kind of like George Pickens on the sideline. That's probably going to be, even though George Pickens had an elite release package, Keon Coleman very unrefined in that category. So he is a little bit pigeonholed in terms of what he can do, but what he does really freaking well. So this is definitely a role that I would love for the Lions to have. Again, don't know if he's going to be here, but still spectacular nonetheless. McKinley Jackson for the Dolphins. Again, they have him at 83rd, and I think that's actually a really solid range for him to be on a big board. I don't think McKinley Jackson needs to be taken in the first round by any stretch of the imagination. This is a very deep interior defensive line class. If I'm going to go after anything, I'm going to go after an edge rusher at this point because of the fact that, I could say Tyler Barron, but Chop Robinson's the guy who I would target above Tyler Barron at this point. Tyler Barron, I'm starting to have not talent issues, but similar to JC Latham, I'm actually starting to see some motor concerns, giving up on reps early when they really shouldn't. So for me, I'm going to address either a different player at that position or a different position, and I'm going to lean towards that position side. Again, you could always go Talise Fuaga and end up getting a star right tackle, but I know that I'm a huge fan of him and not many people are. Y'all will come around. It's okay. It's okay. Not many people are going to be watching Oregon State anyways, so it's totally understandable. It's not like I'm saying everybody's watching him and everybody's hating him. No. Who the hell is watching Oregon State? Just got to be honest. So, regardless, yeah, I mean, I really like Talise Fuaga. I think he's a generational level tackle, and we'll see. We'll honestly see. I like to put my balls on the table, and, there's a big risk that comes with that. We'll see what happens. Zach Zinter for the Buccaneers. Right guard's intriguing because Cody Mauch is, I believe, the right guard right now. So there's no real need for a right guard. I could see potentially a left one. I'd prefer to go right tackle again. I go right tackle. I go Michael Penix at this spot if you want a game manager. I would go other positions. I like the idea of offensive line. But Zach Zinter doesn't have the length of arm necessary for me to feel comfortable just moving him around. I'd rather have him at his native position where he's most comfortable and understands how to use his range properly. And that seems a little trivial because, you're playing the same position, but on the other side. But there's just a difference in your footwork. There's a difference in your hand technique when you get to play players who are pushing different leverages on you, the exact opposite of what you're used to. You got Josh Newton here. I think corner's an excellent idea for the Bills. I mean, with so many injuries going on to their starters. I mean, especially Tre'Davious White has been extremely unreliable in terms of health. You definitely need some extra corner help. I don't think Josh Newton is a first-round pick, but I'm not going to shame him for it. I like Dwight McLaughlin. I do think he's a little bit athletically limited, but, that could be an issue versus the Dolphins, but every corner has an issue versus the Dolphins. I would not be surprised to see Kamari Lassiter, actually, as their first-round selection because of the fact he might run in the 4.2s and could be a match for Tyreek Hill in terms of speed. Now you got Nate Wiggins here. I think this is a solid move for the Ravens. I'm not fully sold on Nate Wiggins. I don't think he can handle bigger, heavier, more physical receivers. He's back-to-back years been absolutely shellacked by Johnny Wilson, who, to be fair, gotta call it out as it is. He is my number 5 player in the draft. But, the AFC North is not a place for corners who can't handle bigger receivers. And I'd prefer somebody who can get a little bit more handsy. Again, Dwight McLaughlin's my type of dude in this situation. Jordan Morgan's a solid tackle. I don't think they need to go after a left tackle. I don't understand that part. I don't know if the writer of this, I'm forgetting his name. I've studied a couple of his mock drafts, but I don't know if he understands that Morgan's a left tackle and not a right. So can move inside on the next level. Okay. Oh, I didn't even read that. That's intriguing. So you're gonna draft Morgan and put him to guard. If that might work. That might work. Honestly, that could work. I'd prefer to go after an offensive tackle like Talise Fuaga at this point, or Blake Fisher to develop him. But I'm not going to complain too much if they just want to move him to guard, because I've been talking about that with Graham Barton quite a bit. AD Mitchell for the Chiefs. I really like AD Mitchell. He had a pretty rough week. I think he only had like 33 yards, but he's still a talented wide receiver. He's much better flashing wise than he was at Georgia, but I don't know. I'd prefer. Let's see. Based on the wide receivers available, I like Troy Franklin. I'd really want to go Jermaine Burton. This dude had almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. I've been a fan of Jermaine Burton. He's been number 34 on my board for a hot minute. Jacob Cowing as well, but not for the Chiefs. Cowing had 4 touchdowns this past week. Baller status. But, I mean, I'm starting to get more and more confident with my receiver evaluations as long as the tape is there. So, for me, I feel like I'm not going to disagree with this pick if it happens, because I could see the upside with AD, especially if he stays healthy. Again, great build, 6'4", 196. He's going to be probably in that higher 4.4 range as well. I would just prefer someone like Troy Franklin, who's so dynamic as a receiver. It was just a little bit more dynamic than AD, and that could just be the little tiny difference at the next level. Cooper DeJean's intriguing for the Eagles, because you could use him as a safety. You can use him as a slot, which they kind of need. And then you could also use him on the boundary. I would not recommend the boundary role, but the fact is he can make an immediate impact on defense and special teams. I'm all down for that, especially on a Super Bowl team where injuries do happen. It's a way to remain happy, healthy, and effective. So honestly, overall, there were some picks in this draft I wasn't a huge fan of, but that's going to be every single draft. You had some really cool ones in here for sure that opened my eyes to some ideas that I'm a big fan of. So thank you so much for watching. See you on the far side.